My name is Sawarnjit Matharu, but it was Sawarnjit Matharu, and my story is for the Colourful Heritage. I was born in 1955 and I came to Scotland in January 1960. My dad, who had lived in Africa, was granted a British passport, so he was here in the late 1950s. He called my mother and I over from Punjab. We came by ship. We came from a small village called Mohame, which is near Nagodar. It's part of Jalandhar. We had to get a train from Nagodar to Bombay, and then from Bombay we boarded the ship, which had a few stops on the way. It took us 22 days to get to Southampton. It was all just very new, very different, quite scary at the time because we couldn't speak a word of English. Daunting. I went to Finniston Primary, which was it's in Anderson now. I couldn't speak a word of English, so I was always quite frightened. I used to get dropped off at school and picked up by my dad. I used to turn up on public holidays, because I couldn't understand when they said, oh, it's a holiday on Monday. And I remember going to school one morning and there was nobody there. And I had to come back home in 1960. So there was no interpreters, there was no language classes. It was just a case of the teachers using sign language and writing notes, which I had to take home. And it was virtually starting from the beginning to learn English. So as a 5-year-old, you can imagine if you can't speak a word of English, there's no help. And you just fumble through. I just practiced at home. My dad helped me. The neighbours, the close that we lived in had quite a few children that went to school with me, so they kind of helped me along. It took me quite a few years, I think maybe 3 or 4 years before I could grasp what the teacher was saying. My dad's English was quite good. He had learnt some English when he was in Africa because he was working for an international company there. So he was fluent, which made a big difference. And my mum learnt as I learnt, so she was kind of learning from me along the way. There weren't very many Sikh, maybe a handful. There weren't any other children that we knew. But slowly, as the years went on, people started coming over from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and you sort of, it just grew, the community just grew. My dad was a joiner. He did French polishing. He worked for a company that did polished furniture.
So he asked you that?
He then joined the buses. He was a bus driver. I thoroughly enjoyed my secondary school. I had lots of friends. I could speak English fluently, and I wasn't scared anymore. I got on very well in the exams. I think because I could understand the language, and it was more or less just like Punjabi became a second language, and English was more of our first language by then. I filled in the police application. Another 3 girls filled it in along with myself, and I was the only one that followed it through. I just found the leaflet that I read was very interesting. It was something that was going to be part of a community, giving back to the community, and I just thought it would be a good idea to try. I was too young to join the police force, so I was asked to join the police cadets for 6 months.
How old were you?
I was 17 and a half. You had to be 18 to join the police. So for those 6 months, I joined the cadets, and I learned an awful lot during those 6 months. It was very much an eye-opener, a kind of vast experience of different sections of the community and how they worked, because we did like monthly attachments to different places. So I did like the Gartnavel Mental Hospital, I did a month there, I did a month at the information room in the police headquarters. We had to go to cases at the High Court, we had to visit the mortuary, we had to know our whereabouts, so it was more like learning about Glasgow and the geography and how to get to places, so it was very, very interesting. I was very much thrilled to see, to find that I could join the cadets, because I wasn't sure at the beginning whether the selection process might be quite high and then not be able to make it. Mum and Dad were not very happy at the beginning, because back in India and Pakistan, I think the police isn't considered a very good job. It's mainly people that can't get other jobs that join the police. Therefore, they weren't too happy, but when I sat them down, I spoke to them and I said, look, if I don't like it, or if you don't like any aspect of it, I will leave. Let me try it, which they were happy to do. The experience as a cadet taught me quite a lot, and I thought, yes, this is very interesting and it's very rewarding, so this is what I want to do. The police would be a way of giving back to the community some of what I had felt that needed to be put into place. It was very different back then because nobody looked on it as a very good job. None of the community looked on it as a career or a job for a girl anyway. But I think sometimes you have to break these barriers, because you don't find out until you actually do what you're wanting to do. And if there was anything that I thought that was against my thinking or my way of life, I wouldn't have done it. But it was very much, I felt that it was very rewarding, because you were helping the public, helping the wider community. So I would say to children nowadays, if you want to help any community, whether it be Indian, Pakistani, British, we're human beings first before we're any other religion. So if you want to help human beings, it's the best thing to do. Being bilingual, I think, helped quite a bit, because if we came across someone who couldn't understand English properly, I was able to interpret for them and explain things to them. The women were just in the office. They did like missing persons reports or caught deaths. They visited homes for interviews and things like that. But then after I think about 6 months, it changed to Strathclyde Police, and women were then asked to do the same duties as the male counterparts. So it wasn't any different from what it is today. The only difference now is that I think they're more family orientated, whereas back then I had to leave because I had when I had my family, I had to leave. No, it was because I had still to do the same shift work, the same shift pattern. I couldn't do 9 to 5, or I couldn't do part-time to accommodate my family.
So that's the reason.
That was the reason I had to leave. No, I got married to someone who had come here after us. His family had come in 1970. He was a Sikh Sardar. I was introduced to him, and we knew the families. We got on really well, so we got married. No, I left the police service when I had the children. I carried on working the shifts after I got married, and sometimes we were working opposite shifts because my husband was an engineer, so he did a shift. His job was shifts too, So it would be he'd be coming in and I'd be going out. When I left the police, I stayed at home for a bit, and then I joined a GP surgery. It was totally different from what I had done before, but it was also helping the community and quite interesting. If they had offered me a daytime job or a different shift pattern that would fit in with a young family, I think I would have stayed. I sometimes regret having had to leave, but such is life, these things happen. I lived with my mother-in-law, and she was a great help. I could leave my children sleeping in bed. She would get them ready for school, put them out to school, and I could then do a few days. I worked part-time for a bit. Then we had our own family business, which we worked as and when required. We worked around the children. I would take them to school and then go into work and then come back when I had to pick them up from school. So it worked quite well. I didn't have to worry about the cooking because my mother-in-law did all that. Some girls are very career-minded, so they will put their children into nursery full-time or have a nanny or something like that. But back then, I think I wanted the children to be brought up by myself and family. So I didn't want to have strangers looking after my children, and that's why I kind of worked round the children's school times. I just feel that even nowadays that we need to, when the children are very young, we need to give them those foundations. So it's very important to be there for your children when they're very young, until they start to understand that yes, you need to work, and yes, they are also important. So a job is a job, but family is very important. And for me, family was very important, so I put that first. Whether you're Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi or any country that you come from, for the British will always be Asians. So it's quite difficult. So it's very important to instill in our children that we will always be different. We can work with everybody, we can try and mix in as much as possible, but that difference will always be there. And we can't forget our roots. We'll never be British. I'm a Sikh woman, and I always will be. I'm born in India. I don't know whether that's why I feel my roots are Indian, but yes, I'm British, I'm Scottish, and I would like to think that I would now be accepted, but whether we are, I don't know. It's the only way of life I know is Scotland. I mean, coming here as a 5-year-old, how do you not become wholly Scottish? I think all parents try to give their children better than what they've had. So I did not enforce anything upon the children. I let them decide what kind of jobs they wanted to go into. And the only thing that we instilled in them was that at the end of the day, they'll always be Sikh British. It's very important, I think, for children to have family around them, to be able to feel secure, and to feel who they are. Oh, they've brought an awful lot of their own culture, their way of life, and I think we need to respect each other's cultures and way of lives. We all add to the wider community, which makes it what it is today. Religion is something that's within you, I think, so it's personal. I did attend Punjabi classes, which weren't very constant. They were kind of, sometimes they were on, sometimes they weren't. But I did try to attend classes, and then my grandfather had come to visit us, so he stayed with us for a while, and he would tell us stories and talk to us, and I learned quite a lot from him. And that's where I think religion came in, because he practiced it quite quietly and very privately. So that's where I learnt what religion was and who we are and how to go about it. Although then later on there was a Gurdwara in Nithsdale Road, and we all started attending that. Oh, it's very important to have elders in your life, and I think if there are grandparents around, and if children live with those grandparents for any length of time, they have that sense of who they are and how to speak to elders and not be so self-centered or selfish. And I think it just depends personally. Not all, it's what your outlook on life is. My children benefited a lot from having their grandmother around. One, she was a support for myself, and two, she not only looked after them, but she also told them stories and talked to them and kept the language going, because she couldn't speak English, so she made my children speak in Punjabi, which was great. There wasn't a lot of support. Gurdwara was just a Gurdwara that you attended on a Sunday, and you heard the kathas or the kirtan and you came home. But nowadays there's so much available for children. They have Punjabi classes, they have storytelling classes for children from a very young age, and they do have a lot available out there for them.
Where do you see the Sikhs in Scotland nowadays?
There's a lot of progression in everything. There's Sikhs guarding Buckingham Palace, there's Sikhs in the army. They have achieved an awful lot. And I think all the communities that came from the Asian countries have achieved a lot of MPs, big businessmen. They've made their mark. I think even to this day, I know there's a lot of division in different cultures, different religions, but at the end of the day, the people, no matter what religion, what background you come from, if you have that in yourself, you're going to see that person as another person, just as another human being, and not a Sikh or a Muslim or a Christian or any Jew or whatever. And if that's what's instilled you, that will never change. Neighbours that were Muslim, neighbours that were Hindu, and later on when the war in the 1960s, she was telling us that a lot of her neighbours used to help her in the sense they didn't let the Sikhs out in case they got attacked. They all protected each other. So at the end of the day, the thing is, we're human beings. Just live your life as best as you can. Give your 100%. Respect everyone. Because what you give out is what you'll get back. So if you give love and respect, that's all life's about. Love and respect, hard work. It all comes back to whatever you give out is what you'll get back. So be patient, respect each other, work hard, give your 100%. If whatever you choose to do it with 100%, nothing less. Otherwise, there's no point.